I'm here right now with Brad Sprogis, one of our Boston power players from the South End, and Sprogis and Neale. And Brad, there's buildings popping up all over Boston right now, and new construction is a hot topic. But something is to be said for the South End and that classic feel that's still kind of the rock of the city.
Well, certainly the new elevator buildings that we see being developed all over the city of Boston, including in the South End, particularly like Ink Block and the multiple buildings being developed there, are very successful. They're very exciting. But the South End is the largest landmarked Victorian neighborhood in the country, and there's still a remarkable and wonderful to see demand for townhouse-style condominiums, whether it's a smaller one-bedroom, two-bedroom floor-through, or a larger duplex or triplex, or even there's a continued demand for full single-family houses, whether they've been completely renovated or people purchasing them, bringing in their architects and contractors and doing a full rehabilitation of them.
Are you seeing people that converted the single family to condos now being converted back to single families?
Yes, and that's interesting how that is continuing to put pressure on the inventory. That's been a big issue in Boston for the last several years, is limited inventory. But if you're an entry-level buyer trying to buy into the neighborhood, not only the developers aren't creating any more floor-through condominiums within townhouses, but we're also seeing a reduction in just the number of them in the neighborhood because people are doing exactly what you just said. They'll buy a large unit in a building and then they'll buy the remaining units, whether they're one bedrooms or two bedrooms, and convert the house back to a single family home.
So for someone out there that's a current owner of a single unit, hold on to it. It's a great investment because they're getting harder to come by, I guess.
They are, yeah. The city, you can't recreate a Victorian townhouse. It's just not possible. The craftsmen aren't there, and the land and opportunity isn't there.
Where do you see the direction of the market going as we're coming into the fall market? Are inventory loosening up at all, or is it still?
If you want something special, the inventory is still going to be really tight. It's if you're coming in, whether you're an empty nester or relocating to Boston, the inventory, I think, is going to continue to be tight, and you need to be ready. You need to be well informed, have spent your time getting familiar with the market, get yourself organized in terms of your mortgage, if you're going to need one, and be ready to spring, because when that listing pops up that catches your eye, you're not going to be the only one looking at it.
We've heard in certain parts of the greater Boston area that super high-end, let's call it, it's not super high in the South End, but 2.5, 3, 4 million has slowed down a little bit. Has that been the case in the South End, or is it still moving pretty quickly if priced correctly?
We have two closings on houses that are going to be completely gut renovated coming up in the next 2 weeks. One of them is $3.2 million. The other one's almost $4 million, and they're going to be. Both buyers have budgeted about $2 million for their renovations. Wow. So there's. That end of the market has not slowed down, particularly for, like I said, something special. These are houses in wonderful locations and have all the attributes that people are looking for.
It's such a unique part of town, right? It has that classic feel, and like I was talking about with John earlier, how that the South End has kind of carried itself all the way out. Now the Flower Exchange is being developed, and that's a wrap.
well, yeah. I mean, we had barriers within the South End for many years of where people would go, but there were also barriers between the Back Bay, Beacon Hill, and the South End, where we would see folks that we would meet who would consider the neighborhood, but then would end up saying, "Well, I think I'm going to consider something on Beacon Hill or in the Back Bay." Now, a lot of those people, several years later, are moving into the South End, and they're competing with the empty nesters and the existing South Enders for that inventory we were just talking about.
So when you have people coming in from out of town, the South End, like we were talking about, has that unique feel. Is your competition all this new construction, or do you find that buyers are usually focused on one type of build, whether it be the new stuff that's going up, 30, 40 stories, or the older?
That's a great question. I think that frequently you'll have a buyer who has an idea of what they want, but when you take them out and make sure that they really consider all their options, they may make a very different decision than what they thought they were going to make. The person who thinks they want the elevator building, concierge services, then they start to see the romance of a Victorian townhouse and they make a completely different decision, and vice versa. And all of a sudden, elevator, garage, no snow shoveling starts to be very appealing. So it's a very personal decision. And if somebody's coming to Boston, relocating into the city, they usually, particularly when they're referred to you, they have friends that live already in Boston. Their friends will make recommendations. They will say, well, so-and-so said I should consider this. And that starts their direction, but then through the process, they make their own decision, and you can't always predict what they're going to do.
Makes sense. We're lucky to live where we live with so many great options.
We're lucky every day.
Thanks, Brad. And if you're moving into the Boston area or in the Boston area and would like to connect with Brad and his team over at Sprogis and Neale, check out sprogisneale.com. And remember, we have more real estate information just like this right here on boston.com.